we live, so we can perhaps commence this conversation, Pawan.
So we are live
Great,
now.
great. Uh, good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all and our specially highly respectable Dr. Ashrafi Bhagat ji. I am Ravindra Mardia from International Creative Arts Center, which is better known as ICAC, an NGO working for the development of art and artists in the country. We have today gathered here on behalf of Samanvay Space. Samanvay Space is a non-profit cultural organization dedicated to the preservation, promotion, and appreciation of all forms of Indian art and literature, both locally and globally. Samanvay organizes cultural events, support artists, work with local communities, and collaborate with organizations and institutions to create a space where art, culture, and community come together. Samanvay works with a wide range of Indian arts, including music, dance, theater, poetry, storytelling, painting, sculpture, and so many other forms of arts. To promote appreciation for Indian art, Samanvay regularly hosts talks and discussions like the one we are having now to promote visual art. They host online art exhibitions through their website. They are keen to work with youth, and Youth Forum members also host regular youth-focused events. At present, they are holding 5 online events per week, mainly Sounds of Soul, which is music, Nrityam, Streams of Rasa, dance and drama, poetry, about literary arts, art, a perspective, talk and discussion, Samanvay Youth Forum, which is organized for the youth by the youth. Dr. Ashrafi Bhagat ji is an art historian, PhD in art history. She was the former head and associate professor, Department of Fine Arts, Stella Maris College, Chennai. She is an independent art critic, author, and curator. She has authored a coffee table book, A Perceptive Eye, on Honorable Surya Prakash ji, which is published by Kalakriti Art Gallery, Hyderabad. She has written monographs on eminent artists such as A.P. Santhanaraj, K.C.S. Panikar, S.G. Vasudev, R.B. Bhaskaran, P. Perumal, V. Vardarajan, R. Vardarajan, K.S. Gopal, and many, many, many more. She was invited by Marg Journal to be guest editor for a special edition, The Contemporary Art of South India. Ashrafi ji regularly writes on modern art and contemporary art in newspapers, magazines, and journals. She has written over 200 catalogs, essays for the artists. She was also invited to be an art historian residence at Concordia College, Bronxville, New York State. Dr. Ashrafi ji has received the Women Achievers Award for her contribution as an art historian and art critic awarded by the Brew magazine. She also created an exhibition on behalf of NGMA, Bangalore, of artists who shaped the Madras art movement, titled Regional Modernity, the Madras Art Movement 1. She was invited by DAG, the Delhi Art Gallery, to create a show on Madras artists titled Madras Modern Regionalism and Identity at Mumbai. She has curated several group shows all around the country. This is a small introduction. I can go on and on and on about her achievements. But today, the topic of discussion is different. So we will start with our first request on the subject. I'll request Ashrafi ji to kindly introduce Honorable Shri Surya Prakash ji to our audience as a human being, as an artist.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, sorry, you're saying something?
Naini, go ahead, please.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. And thank you for this opportunity to speak on Mr. Surya Prakash. What do I say about him as an artist, as a person? I had a close encounter with him in his studio, with him as a person and with his artworks. A man of simplicity, humility, a gentleman artist of polite disposition and a generous heart. He was fussy. He was never ever fussy, but very fastidious when it came to his art and art making. At the heart of his works was concentration to details as well as a meticulousness. And the same was manifest in his persona as well as in his studio, which was uncluttered, neatly kept, and he knew exactly what was where. Surya Prakash, his simplicity and humility lay in the fact that when I asked him how did he conceive of his concepts, he says, I don't paint anything from imagination. What I see and observe are my experiences, and that goes into my painting. Now, any artist making such a statement, it would be construed that he has no imagination. But as a matter of fact, it is this very important element of his mental landscape, which makes him a great intellectual. In the course of conversation with him, when I asked a series of questions, he says, I am no philosopher, I am no great intellectual thinker. I am just what I am, and I only paint what I see. So between the spaces of his silence, the well thought out words makes him a great intellectual and a great philosopher. And the imagination that he denies is actually, I feel, is far more powerful than knowledge. Surya Prakash was a pioneer in many respects. He was the one who started an art gallery in Hyderabad in 1992, at a time where there was no space for artists to have a visibility of their works. Not only that, he also bought paintings of younger artists, including his peers, and helped them financially. That is something which is very rare in an artist. But Surya Prakash definitely had it. I thought that was a divine gift which was given to him to help his peers, to help the younger artists, which otherwise is just not possible. And especially in the period of 60s and 70s or even 80s, when life was still difficult selling art and being an artist. But he went forth and he did that. So as a person, as an artist, as an intellectual, as a philosopher, I think he had in his wisdom of observing the world around him, he had almost was on the path of a spiritual progress for a higher wisdom. So that's all I can say about him as a person and as an artist.
Great, great. We'll intervene in between. Fortunately, we have Surya Prakash's daughter with us, Arun Khan. I will request Arunji to kindly say a few words about your father.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everybody. And I would like to thank Samanvay, thank Dr. Ashrafi and Dr. Ravindra to, take out your precious evening time for this webinar. And I would like to thank Pawan and all the entire Samanvay team for coming out with the thought of having a webinar on my dad and the perspective of his. And he's also, Samanvay had approached me also for, exhibiting or participating in this exhibition, which is their first one. So then I was also thinking that, my dad had always helped younger artists grow. So even I first thought that, okay, then I thought, okay, fine, it's okay to have so many younger artists within that. Usually in the art field, it's like only senior artists work with senior artists. So they showcase their works. But here it was different. But I thought, no, my father has always encouraged younger generations and their work and helped them sell their works, promote themselves. So I also, said, no, we should have it. And so he's also participating. We have placed 2 works in this exhibition. And I think Ashrafi ma'am has already actually spoken everything about my dad so beautifully. Thank you, ma'am. So he's one different person who actually promoted other people's work. For example, even if it's LV Prasad or CCMB, he never thought of, having his own works there. Even when he started his Surya Gallery in Hyderabad in 1992, it was like he used to feel very bad because in those days, no one would spend on a wall, any amount of money for having an art piece. But then he used to feel bad for the artist after the show. If nothing is sold, he would definitely purchase a couple of works. And therefore, I have a lot of collection now of so many artists. So they're all there with us. Yeah. And in both the institutions also, the institutions would not have that kind of budget to afford real great art, who are reputed artists. Works. So therefore he used to encourage and have a lot of artist camps. He's the one who actually started art camps in Hyderabad, so that the institute also gets some works towards the end of the camp. So yes, he's always helped people, and it was a nice journey, and he's a very soft person. He, as a father also, he never forced us, none of both the daughters, Kiran and me, to get into the art fields, because these days many people ask me, how come you do not paint? I say, no, I never thought of, like, my father just gave us the freedom, okay, go do what you want. So that's why I've always been in the academic institutions, and now I'm in ISB as a senior manager. I work there. So we never thought on those lines, but I did try my hand the other day on how dad was painting. But yes, I didn't have the patience to continue it. Then I actually understood how hard he worked with his shaky hands towards the end, his fingers used to shake a bit. Even to answer a phone, he used to actually slide it. He did have some problems. So, but whenever I told him, okay, let's go and see a neurologist, he would say, no, this is age. What are you talking? No, I'm not wasting my time. I have work. So then I just feel how hard he worked to fill one whole canvas, how many strokes he had to do, and how much time and effort. So with his demise, we all lost a great artist and a father figure. It would be our duty to carry forward his vision. So we all have to come together to make this happen of, encouraging younger artists and younger generation and help them work and sell their works well also. Yes. So it's over to you, ma'am, and Mr. Ravindra. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Fortunately, I have had an opportunity to spend about 10 days with him, 24/7, during our trip to London and Scotland.
Oh,
And yeah, and also last exhibition that he had in Bombay, the Venice series. So 4 days, 5 days, we were together all the time. And I really know how great a gentleman he was. More than an artist, I will respect him as a human being, a great human being.
Actually, so many of them.
Very nice person.
So many of them I come across on the phone, on his phone, because I still kept his phone alive for his contacts and, to just keep him alive, his email ID and all. Actually, Dr. Ashrafi and I spoke today, this evening, and she was saying, Arun, no, just leave him. His soul should have some peace. Don't do this. So it's like that. So, I've come across people who said, no, there is nothing in Hyderabad anymore that we want to visit, because whenever a visitor comes, his guests, he would take complete care of their hotel booking to, sending them off and entertaining them, having dinners, lunches with them, and it's like that. So yeah, he's a warm person, and yeah, many people have stopped coming to Hyderabad, especially whoever came for him. Yes.
I've also had a nice experience in Hyderabad. He took me around to that L.V. Prasad Hospital, his studio, and the museum that he had created. Every wall has a beautiful painting, and not only of Surya Prakash, of practically every senior artist of the country has contributed because of him to that hospital. Great. Now I'll come back to Ashrafi ji. Please tell us something about Surya Prakash ji's initiation into the field of art. What made him become an artist? Ashrafi ji.
Yes, I got your question. I don't know what made him come into the field of art, but he definitely studied art. I think that's a question one needs to ask Arun as to what made him come into the field of art. It never struck me to ask him that question. The thing is, he studied at Hyderabad College of Art and Architecture, and he graduated from there in 1960. Sorry, what was your question? Seem to have...
Yeah, if I may intervene here.
Yeah,
so
please.
I'll tell you his story. As a child also, he would go to school. He was born in Madira in Kamam district. At a very small town. Even today, I believe the population is just 30,000 there, because I recently had been there and checked. So I went to his school also. Actually, we went there to give a big donation there so that they do something and have some art awards and all that. Okay, because he studied in that school. So when I went there, he only told us, but in childhood also he used to just go around the environment, look at plants and water bodies and all that. And yeah, it so happened that he has two other elder brothers. I think one was in the police, so he actually retired as a DSP, and one other brother is an engineer. So actually his father was a politician in the city, in the village. So he was a congressperson, and he initially told all the children that, look, we have a lot of money, a lot of land, but yeah, I want you all to go and make a living in the city. So go back there. So my father just finished his 10th there in the village. So there's no great college there. So he said, no, all of you go away from here. So these people came. I mean, the uncle who was in police was already moving towns. And then, okay, these people came, and my second uncle, actually, he, admitted him in an architecture college, I believe. So those days, I don't know how, or maybe he did his +2 and then he joined the architecture college. Then my father wouldn't go to college. Yeah, he was given a bicycle and a little bit of every day, some 1 rupee or something as a, little money to buy some tea or have some snack. So he would go to school, but college, but people at home are thinking he's going to college, but he would never go to the college. So he would miss college. And later when uncle got a call or something, no, those days, no phones and all that, sorry. So somehow he met the principal or the teacher there, and they said, no, he never comes to college. So then he got a big shouting, where are you going? Every morning you leave and you go, where are you going? He said, no, I go to JNTU, look around there. I told you many times, I don't want to study this. I want to study in JNTU, and fine arts is my interest. So then they thought, okay, what to do with this boy? He's not going to college anyways. So then he admitted him there in the college for fine arts. So that's how he landed up there.
I think he attended MS college at Baroda also for some time.
I don't know, sir. I'm sorry, I really don't know.
I think he got admitted in Baroda MS college, and then he shifted to Hyderabad again.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes, he went there for printmaking, I think. He wanted to study printmaking. So he did go there and...
Okay.
Great.
Just repeat your question, sir. What made him an artist? Yeah, and
now that is answered by Arunji. We'll go to the next question. Surya Prakash ji mostly worked in different series, different types of series that he created. Most of the people know about his foliage and water body and leaf series. People do not know about the other series that he has created. I would request you to kindly elaborate on different series done by him and how do you look at them?
See, after graduating from after what Arun says, that whether it was really a graduation or not, I don't know. But once he passed out of the institution, he was on a quest to find an artistic medium where he would be able to express himself. And in doing so, he had to look around, he had to search. And it was during this time that he was attracted to the notion of abstract. And he had seen it in the works of Cezanne, Ram Kumar, Akbar Padamsee, Raza. And these artists made a deep impact on his sensibility. When he started work in the 1960s, which I call it as learning the ropes, he started painting very, very ordinary scenes. He would paint the streets, lampposts, fuse box, roofs of the houses, construction sites, building in rows. These were the kind of works that he started working with. But when you have a closer look at his works, when you scrutinize his works, I found that his strokes, his brush strokes were very broad, almost, like abstractions of colors in shapes and forms. And surprisingly, at that young age, he must have been just about 20, 25 years, not still younger. He had a perceptive eye to notice that how he was able to, abstract the landscape that he saw around him, especially the urban landscape that he saw around him. So when you have a look at his, works, I was quite surprised, that it showed so much of maturity at that age. And, he had the capacity to use his colors in such a way that there is always an imminent presence of light in his works. And this presence of light, continues throughout. I don't know if he was really aware that he was creating it, but it was a kind of an emissive light that was, very evocative. And depending on what he painted, it could get poetic, it could get surreal, it could be very provocative, or it could be very sublime and spiritual at the same time. So his early works were what I call it as learning the ropes, where he was, experimenting, where he used mainly, colors, forms, textures, line, all these elements, so that, he could explore how the space can be utilized. Now, most of these institutions in the 60s, the pedagogy was that they were taught this academic realism. And modernity denies this academic realism, which is the representation of the illusion of space or the third dimension. Now, his pedagogy was so much entrenched in that, he had to get out of that. And somehow, I find that throughout his works, he was not able to really get out of it. It remained there with him, but he was able to manipulate it so astutely, so skillfully, so cleverly, and in a crafty manner, that one would miss out that actually, that there is a little bit of an illusion of space. So the first series that he did is what I call it as Urban Detritus. And that was painted in 1965. That is the mid-1960s. Surya Prakash gives an incident. He says, when I was walking along the streets, and suddenly I came upon this huge heap of automobile junk that was, dumped there on the side of the pavement. He said it was stunning when I saw it. And he took a lot of photographs. He used to take a lot of photographs. And of course, he used to do a lot of sketches also, but photographs actually helped him. So he took a lot of photographs of these, automobile dumps, and he started contemplating on it. Now, when you look at automobile junk, it is metal, it is inorganic. But what he did was, he made this into an organic form, made it into, he made it come alive. He made it very living. And how did he do it? He did it by anthropomorphizing it. That is, when you look at many of his works of the urban detritus, which are these automobile junks, you find that, they morph into various human forms, or they morph into various sea creatures, or they are, they can be very fantastic, they can be very scary, or they can be also very happy forms. So taking a junk like this and then, transforming it into something else is something that nobody had ever thought of at the time. And the subject matter was so important in the 60s, especially, when India was going through a period of identity crisis for the artists. He never thought of any of those things, that you should look into his local tradition, transform them and create art. Rather, he looks at all of these things, and he had the audacity, he had the confidence that, he could recreate these forms and make it into a work of art. Like Man Ray said, creative forces and expressions reside materially in textures and colors of the pigments, in the inventions of form and organization, in the element of two-dimensionality in which these elements are brought together. And it is the artist's concern now to link all of these with his wit, experience, and imagination. And that is what exactly he did in this, urban detritus. There is vitality, there is imagination, and there is a conviction of purpose. The conviction of purpose was that this could be the most ordinary, mundane dump anybody could find, but he was able to take those images and make it into a work of art. And by making it into a work of art, that itself became so captivating. So it's not only that he transformed all this, but his colors are equally brilliant. He seemed to have used the luminous oranges and the striking yellows, and he created his forms. One needs to look at this early works of urban detritus of Surya Prakash to really see as to how he was able to transform, metamorphose, and give it almost a human sensibility to these objects which nobody would even look at it twice. So that is the urban detritus, which he created. From urban detritus, he created what is known as surreal abstraction. These forms eventually, they got so much metamorphosed that it lost its shapes, it lost its, form, and it just became an abstraction. So he began working on these forms, and they became almost a surreal abstraction. I call it as surreal because, he created forms that were just seen hanging in space, that had no context, or they were, over a landscape which was equally barren, which was equally arid, and, where there was not a presence of the human soul. He seems to have avoided the human soul or the human figurative representation. Though he was very much aware of India's tradition in mural painting, in miniature painting, how it was filled with figures. So he told me in the course of the conversation, he says, when I visited Ajanta, I know that it was fully vandalized. But you know what attracted me there? It was the fragments of the remaining murals that were left on the wall is what attracted me. So you can already see here that, these were certain aspects of life which nobody would even want to look at it. Surya Prakash, gave it a form that made it into a work of art. And that's something, which I thought was not part of an elitist art. I mean, I had worked with so many artists, but here I'm seeing an artist, who looks into something and makes it into a work of art. And that itself, is a mark of his creativity, of his craftsmanship, and his approach to life, that nothing in life is mundane. Nothing in life is to be taken for granted, that every creature, every form, every living shape that is surviving is a part of life. And, that is why I call him that, he had a very perceptive eye. And that how he observed, experienced, and then, internalized all his experiences. And his intuition was so sharp, was so insightful, that at the right moment when he encountered his canvas, many of these forms would just, come out in a way that sometimes he found it difficult to control his forms. So that's the way, he had all of these dredged inside his subconscious, and it came out at the right time. So his empirical experiences were very much important. He says, not that I'm a great reader, but then I think, more than knowledge, it is the experiences of life that he went through actually helped him in creating a variety of themes also. So surreal abstraction led to levitation of forms over a landscape. Now, the common thread, which runs through all of his works is one of duality, life and death, organic and inorganic. Some of the aspects that I see there in his works. And it is something which is very closely connected to life itself. Nothing is permanent. Everything is in a process of constant change. And that is something which he seems to have understood. So, as he progressed with his art, this levitation of form, he takes the motif of a leaf. He takes the motif of a leaf and he says that the leaf, while it is attached to the plant, is alive. But once it gets detached, then, it becomes dead. So here we have a reverse of the urban detritus. That which was inorganic, he made it organic with the automobile parts. Here something which is organic, he's making it inorganic. So he says when a leaf gets detached, it is dead. It has no life of its own and it is just carried away by the wind in whatever way, or it falls on the ground, and that's where the life of the leaf ends. So imagine a leaf. Whoever thinks of, taking a leaf and then, making it into a work of art. And he created all of these, the full series of these levitational forms over a landscape or against a blue sky Or, he would take one particular leaf and then manipulate and manage it in such a way that it seems to be the chief protagonist in his paintings. So that is how he created this levitational forms, where he makes the organic into inorganic. From this, he moves into reflections. Reflections are actually the mental landscapes are the imaginations of his mental landscapes, where, he tries to show the body of water, which I call it as depthless depths. It's a paradox. It cannot be depthless, and at the same time, it cannot have a depth. But when you look at this series, you will find that the first glance you say, oh, it's flat, it has a beautiful design, and it is meticulously rendered. But then as you begin to, walk into his paintings, you realize that there is so much of depth he has created. That is because of his, experience, of his knowledge and his understanding of handling color. The subtle tones, the subtle nuances, the intricacies of light and shade, and how he was able to create this. And to say that it was a reflection, he created a series of dashes in white. It's a very beautiful series. It's a series, which can really move you. It's a series that has a lot of depth in his thinking process. And that's how he created Reflections. Then the Reflections organically moved into another series, which was known as a floral aesthetics. And in the floral aesthetics, he changed the format of the canvas itself. So they were rectangle, they were rhomboid, or they were circular. And the circle came especially from the, the pool of water he had created in his own home. And there he had, planted the lotus pods, which started to bloom. And they bloomed in such a way that they seemed to, go beyond the rim of those, reinforced concrete circular slabs which had piled one on top of the other and had made a pool out of it. And when he found these, leaves and flowers growing out of it, you find that same concept, appearing also in his works. And leaves and flowers, go beyond the format or the edge of the painting. And that itself, conveyed another aesthetic. So the visual aesthetics which Surya Prakash offers in his works is something very distinct, very individual, very creative, and he formulates it in a way that is according to the way he has observed, and then how he translates and transforms that. So the process of change is constantly there in his works. A change which he has seen in nature, how he translates it into his works. Now the floral aesthetics finally leads to his paintings of landscapes, which I call it as a bouquet to nature. And these landscapes, I tell you, sometimes, when I was at the L.V. Prasad Institute and he was taking me around and showing me the place, there was a huge painting. I think, I don't know, I don't even know how to measure it visually, but it was a huge painting which occupied an entire wall. And I told myself, anybody who is not knowledgeable about art would think that this is a digital print. And, that landscape that he had created was something amazing, was something awesome. Now we find that, how Surya Prakash is changing gears. And he's marking another milestone in his career itself by a new theme, by a new medium also. And the new medium was that now he gives away his oils and he takes to acrylics, because he says the times demands that, he works in a manner so that acrylics also can be used. And he begins to use acrylics and he begins to paint nature. Now, in painting nature, it's not that you see broad brush strokes like the way Manet painted, or, it looks like as though it has been breathed upon, like many of the Italian or the Dutch artists would do it. But here was, a technique which once again he develops, which is dots and drops, almost a pointillistic technique, which is a very tedious process. And and all his canvases that I had seen of his landscapes are large. And he says that I don't have anything particularly in mind. Sometimes if a dot falls, then that would lead to a creation of a form. But his process of working in the landscape paintings was that he would give a coating of various tones of colors as a background. And from these tones, colored backgrounds that structures it as a composition, he begins to identify shapes like the stump of a tree, or reflection of water of the sky in the waters, or a clump of flowers, or a patch of grass. He says, I can see all those things, identify it, and then develop it. And his method of working was such that when you look at his landscapes, you find some strange perspectives, which you otherwise generally don't see it at all if it is painted with the correct rules of perspective to create this sense of space. He would have the canvas on the floor, and then he would work from all the sides. And it was this working methodology which resulted in creating this very strange perspective and, eerie viewpoints, which people would wonder as to how he has managed it. So in this respect, he created this whole series of landscapes, which in which the colors itself are so beautiful. He traveled to States in 2015, and he was at the Silent Valley and Long Woods, and he observed the changing season. And that is also reflected in his works. Now, not that he was very fastidious about, how his dot should be, or how his dash should be, or how his drop should be. So, in a free manner, he would paint. While many of his earlier works were very, very intricate, very, very minutely detailed, you find that many of his later works, were not so minutely detailed, and it was very broadly rendered. Now, he says that these are not realistic landscapes. As a matter of fact, he told me in the course of conversation, I'm an academic realist, but not in a conservative sense. I don't simulate, or I don't imitate, or I don't just represent nature, I see it. But I look at nature and take only those forms that I wish to have it in my painting. So in a sense, once again, we have Surya Prakash using slices of his memory, which he collages together in the way he wants to put it. And he says, I'm not an abstract artist. The images I paint have an abstract nature. Now that itself is, quite contradictory, because I don't know, for him, the concept of abstraction was very different. He, he seems to not essentialize forms as it would be done in abstraction, but rather, he generalizes the forms. And in that generalization of forms, he feels that he has created an abstraction. So his understanding of abstraction was very, very different. And he says the same thing here also. I am not a realistic painter. These are abstractions of nature. And these abstractions of nature is that when you have a closer look at it, you find that no botanist can identify the species of the grass or the flowers or the trees or whatever. So even the trees, what you see, are a conglomeration of an assimilation of various kinds of trees that he has seen. And then, how he brings it alive on his canvas in the way he wants to do it. So he says, when he said that I have no imagination and that I don't paint from imagination, again, he contradicts himself, because it is purely his imagination which allows him to work in the way he works. And these are the various experiences also which have been internalized. Now, the last series that he created was that of what I call it as prose and poetry, and that it was of Venice. I believe when he was in college, he came across, he saw the works on Venice by his teacher, Vidya Bhushan. And Vidya Bhushan had also given him a painting of Venice. And he says that coincidentally, I don't think it was a coincidence, I would call it as synchronicism. Nothing in life is coincidence. he had a few decades later, he had an opportunity to curate the exhibition of, what's his name? Vidya Bhushan. And it was at this exhibition while he was curating that he saw a large number of works that were done on Venice. And when he looked at those works, at the time he promised himself, this was in the 90s or so that he had curated. He promised himself that he would definitely visit Venice, and the opportunity came to him in 2011, where he went to Venice and he stayed there for 3 weeks, and he observed and he internalized and he assimilated all his visual perceptions, and he took a large number of photographs. Now, Venice is a land of magic, where you have the contradictions or the paradoxes of the fluidity with the mass, the fluidity of the water with the mass of the architecture. And that was something which struck him. So once again, it is this quality of duality which is inherent in his work: organic, inorganic, life and death. So here he finds the limpidity of the water and the mass of the architecture, and how he was fascinated by it. More so, we find that there are 4 prominent elements in his Venice series. One is water, the architecture, the boats, and the sky. And it is these 4 elements that he manipulated in a variety of manner. You have to look at his Venice works to really believe in the way he has painted it. Of course, his artistry, his dexterity, his skill, his draftsmanship cannot be denied. He was, perfect in almost all of these things. That is why he was able to create it. And once again, he says, don't think that these are certain shoots, shots I have taken and then that I am reproducing it. As a matter of fact, I have taken elements from the large number of, photographs I have taken and put them together. So once again, it is, the slices of his perspective of what he had seen, and then, how he puts it together. And can you ever think of Venice being painted in black and white? Well, Surya Prakash did it. And he says that it was, it was lying dormant within him, and it was, screaming to come out as to how he can paint in black and white. So he decided to paint in black and white the entire Venice series. And he says, I used only the palette knife and the brush. And he said that they may look structured. I said, yes, they are very structured. As a matter of fact, I don't see that mobility. I don't see the flow, which is generally there. The organic character is kind of missing. He says, yes, it is very difficult when you're using a palette knife. It's not possible to create that kind of, organicity or the mobility. And moreover, it's a monochrome. It's just black. There's no color. So that again, offers a challenge. And then, he muttered to himself that every work of art anyway is a challenge. And then I understood that, what it was for him to work in completely black and white, because many artists are, threatened by the color black. And they find it very difficult to, assimilate it in their work. But here was an artist who was bold, he was daring, who was dynamic, who was full of vitality, who was full of energy. And that is how, he created his Venice series also. So the magic of atmosphere, the magic of light, the reflection in the water, the textures of the bricks and the stone of the Renaissance building, and especially the boats, bobbing up and down in the water, is something, which you have to see it in his series. And it makes a huge impact on one's sensibility. One may have a tendency to dismiss it and say, oh, I mean, enough has been painted on Venice. But no, you need to scrutinize his work. You need to have a closer look at his work. And, his works has the capacity to, invite the viewer to a closer scrutiny. And when a work of art does that, that means the artist is successful, that there is something in his art, which makes it for an intimacy, a kind of an endearment, which is given to a work of art. And that was something, which Surya Prakash seems to have really given it to his entire series. A versatile artist, who had the capacity to go from one to another and not afraid as to what others are going to say, but it was only his inner voice that he, always heard, and that is how he was able to progress further. See, it is this strong conviction. He had this strong conviction, and it is this strong conviction which made him do whatever he had to do. Because I know that many people whom I met, and I said that I'm going to write on Surya Prakash's landscapes and Venice. They used to screw up their faces. He says, no, what is there in his work? I mean, after all, landscapes, it was like a threat to me. How am I going to, encounter his works, and how am I going to write about his works? But once you meet the artist and you know as to his methodology of work, then you know that nothing matters. And I think they are one of the most beautiful landscapes that have ever been created with, strange perspective. That is, something which is very much part now of the contemporary milieu.
Great. You have really explained all his series in a very meticulous manner. Thank you so much. And I think, I don't know, people listening will remember it for years and years to come. Thank you so much. Now, somewhere you mentioned that during early 70s, he was playing with this junk of automobiles. And he created lots of paintings out of that. Did he ever create a sculpture also out of that?
No, I don't think he created the sculptures out of it. But, that was the general fashion. That was a general contemporary trend, because it was around this time also only that the assemblages, or what we call it as a junk sculpture, had developed in the West.
Yes.
But he never did that. Today, that is very much fashionable. It is very much an in thing to have, these junks put together and, creating various forms out of it. No, he never ever created sculpture out of it, but he sculpted those, forms into an organicity. That is what, how he metamorphoses them into something which becomes a living thing.
Okay. He did something in printmaking also. Can you recollect any of his prints or any of his experiences with the prints? Actually,
his landscapes continued into his printmaking. And he did also a lot of drawings with the silver point, silver pen, golden tipped pens, etc. And most of his printmakings had almost the same theme. So, but for him, the medium was different. It was only in landscape that he shifted from oils to acrylics. That was the only difference there that was there. But otherwise, in his printmaking, it was the same themes that he used.
Thank you so much. Now, I think we have Mrs. Vijay Ramamji with us today. She is also a trustee in Samanvay and deputy director in LV Prasad Hospital. Can we have her? Can we listen to her for a moment?
Sure. Yeah. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening. It was a pleasure actually listening to three of you, Dr. Ravindra and Dr. Ashrafi and Arun. And it was really nostalgia for me. My association with with Mr. Surya Prakash has been over the past 32 years probably, from 1988 onwards. He was basically a kind of a colleague, a friend, very good friend of mine, and my neighbor too. He stays very close by to my place. So with all these things, I had a long association with him, not only as an artist, as a person, and as a good friend also. Actually, a few days back, Samanvay hosted another event. We talked about how LV Prasad Institute has been promoting art. And so let me brief you. Actually, Ashrafi has visited, I think Ravindra ji also have visited the institute. So you would have realized probably that our chairman, Dr. Gollapalli and Rao, when he created this institute, I've been associated with the institute right from inception, 1987 onwards. He always would say, this place should not look like a hospital. It should look like something different. So we made that kind of an endeavor initially, with all the landscaping little bit. We started first 1 year. So we were trying to do our best to look more appealing aesthetically and all, but we didn't have any paintings whatsoever. And we had a lot of research collaborations with CCMB at the time. And once it so happened, our chairman, Dr. Gollapalli Rao, visited CCMB to meet Dr. Ashrafi Bhagat. And probably you would have known that even CCMB also promoted art and culture other than pursuing their scientific innovations. So they had a lot of paintings in the lobby that fascinated our chairman, Dr. Rao. Then he asked Dr. Ashrafi Bhagat. Then immediately he introduced him to Mr. Surya Prakash. Then he was actually artist in residence in CCMB at that time. So then Dr. Rao asked him whether he would like to come and do anything for the institute. So Surya Prakash immediately agreed. And all the more, we have also given him a space for his studio. And so that actually had been very convenient for him for the reason he used to stay in Srinagar colony. Instead of going to CCMB, to have his studio at our place, was 2 kilometers away, was very convenient for him. So he had his studio there. And initially, we had a long corridors, and always we would say the corridors should not occupy anything else. The free corridors and lobbies we had. Because we have basically, we are a non-profit organization. It's a charitable trust, LV Prasad Institute. Many people do not think it's not a corporate hospital at all. We do 50% of our services free of cost. And so far over the past 33 years, we touched about 30.64 million people where we have a presence in 4 of the states.
Great.
All these 30 million people know if they have any eye problem, they know where to go. Right. So they come, actually we have about 210 centers spread across these places in our country, especially mostly in Telangana. We started in Hyderabad, first our center, flagship center in Bandra Hills. And subsequently we have 3 other tertiary centers in Bhubaneswar, Visakhapatnam and Vijayawada, as big as the center in Hyderabad. And we have about 20 secondary centers in small districts in the 4 states. And then some of the other vision scanning centers, about 200 are there in other small villages. So this is our endeavor. Through this endeavor, we have touched upon 50% of our services are being given free of cost to the economically underprivileged. When they come to the institute, we don't charge anything at all. Other 50% pay for the services. It's a kind of a cross subsidy that we have. We take care of the paying patient. That way we have been working. Of course, Mr. LV Prasad gave us a big donation and a piece of land where we stand at the Bandra Hills in Hyderabad. So that's the reason it's been named after him. Otherwise, it's run by a trust, Hyderabad Eye Institute and the Hyderabad Eye Research Foundation. We are into a lot of research, education, rehabilitation, innovations, product development, rural eye care, and a lot of things. We have about 10 different components which we evolved over the years. Because of this endeavor of Dr. Rao to make it look like other than a hospital. So we were basically develop some gardens initially and make sure that the premises were clean. We didn't have any paintings as such. But Mr. Surya Prakash, when he entered the institute in 1988, so he had few of his paintings which were adorning the walls and all. Then what he did was, as all of you were saying, Arun was also saying, he promoted young artists. Those days, I remember he had M.F. Hussein's prints as an exhibition. So we couldn't afford, because as a non-profit organization, we couldn't afford much. We are a charitable organization. But M.F. Hussein's prints somehow we managed to buy. Even now we have his prints only. And then some of the other young upcoming artists, he used to hold the exhibitions, actually in the patient corridors only. We used to hang them here and there. We used to help them. And then, as Arun was saying, probably, himself was buying. We also used to buy 1 or 2 paintings of theirs. Actually, now a few of them have become very eminent artists of the country. At that time, they were budding artists, I would say. So that's how, he made sure that he made a difference. So when Dr. Rao went and asked him to come over, he came. And one thing is, when you are all talking about when he saw the landscapes and he tried to register in his mind and the same thing he used to put it in his paintings. He also truly developed our landscapes also. Actually, in all the campuses, actually in some of the coffee, we have actually come out with a coffee table book, 2020, in 2012, all the compilation of all the artworks that we have got and aesthetics and our gardens and everything. He had developed a lot of landscapes. And so that way, he would help us with the landscapes. And probably a few of you would have seen our raw garden in Banjara Hills. That actually, when we were coming out with the other building, and our chairman is also against cutting any trees or any of the rocks. Actually, they did not want to demolish any of the rocks to construct it, much against his will, because of the demand. In the Hyderabad campus, we have come out with a new building about say 4 or 5 years back. So he was not willing to cut those rocks or not the trees also. But then we found some underground rocks at the time when we were digging the earth. So then they come out with Surya Prakash and Dr. Rao and others have come out with a theme that we'll develop a garden there. So we have created a raw garden there in the patient care area. And some of the patients, even now, we put some benches there. Some of the patients, some go there when they're waiting, they just enjoy the garden there. There's a fountain there. So that is there forever. His imprint is there in the gardens. And actually, you were saying the digital printing, not the digital printing that I don't know what you call it, with the tiles, he created one kind of a structure, wall hanging. I think Ashrafi was saying it's a huge one in one of our centers in Hyderabad. In our rural IK center, where we have training programs, he had actually scaffolding to make the workers go there and painted things. We have a picture of his also somewhere. So that kind of hardships he would go through. And he also developed a lot of lotus ponds around the institute. Actually, we had a lot of lotus ponds. We used to call one garden as a lotus garden. Actually, that was removed and we had to come out with a new building there. We had a lotus garden. And some of the themes when our chairman would say, I'm coming out with this building, especially we have a education center in a different campus near Himayat Sagar Reservoir. It's called Kismatpur. So there we have one side on the education center and one side a rural IK center training program we have had. It's called it a school of optometry. Then he said, this is a school of optometry. You come out with some kind of a theme for that. What he did was he had put a big tree with the shoots, tender shoots coming down. I think you would have seen it. And the bigger leaves are falling down. So it's an old order yielding place to the new kind of thing. Young children come and they come out and the older people go away kind of thing. That is there still in our rural center. And even in the rural center also, he came out with a picture is there. One old man is sitting with a lamp. Actually, whenever I walk into the center, it looks so real, I tell you. It looks very real. So he created those kind of concepts and everything. And so his series of paintings, especially when he entered the institute, probably all those, the other things that you were talking about, on the roadside, the creation of his junk paintings and everything. But there, actually, I'm not familiar with that. But when he entered the institute, he was coming out with the rocks falling. You could have probably some of that. That was the series he was doing. So all our walls used to falling. So that fascinated me. Leaves falling, actually, in the sky. So this, it's got very, very colorful paintings and all, which really fascinated us. And he also created a lot of amphitheaters for us, and where, with the grass at different levels and all. And because of all these things, he really made a huge difference to the institute. And with aesthetics and the way it appeared, we really miss him in the institute a lot. I think I sent this invite to some of my colleagues. Maybe they would be there. If they want to say anything about him, probably Pravan, we should give them a kind of a chance to talk about him. They can raise their hands. And in 2016, while he was there, actually one day, we have actually our annual Foundation Day ceremony on 17th October. So that day, 2016, he was waiting. Actually, we have a staff function and all. So he was waiting outside for somebody. I said, why are you waiting here? Then he said, I'm waiting for Vaikuntham. I don't know, he was invited for this event and specially invited. So I'm waiting to receive him. So I also waited. We took him up there. And during that course of the inauguration, the function, our chairman announced the day that the Institute Art Gallery will be named after Mr. Surya Prakash. Actually, in 1999, we had an art gallery established in the Institute. he facilitated all that art gallery infrastructure and everything. Mr. Himif Hussain came and inaugurated it at that time. And so Mr. Hussain, when he came, we wanted him to speak like any others. At that time, he said, actually, I narrated this also recently. He said, I'm an artist. You should have given me some canvas. I would have painted on that. We really regretted. So what we did was, one of my colleagues went and got a marker pen. So I put a signature on the wall there. We still preserve the signature of Mr. Hussain on the walls. And so that art gallery was just an art gallery till recently. In 2016, our chairman, Dr. Rao, decided to name the art gallery after Mr. Surya Prakash. So we have the art gallery. And he had actually facilitated a number of workshops by the artists, be it sculptors or artists, and everybody, they would come, and we would actually, how we acquired artists as a non-profit organization is, most of the artists, either they would give it at a concessional price, 50%, whatever it is. Sometimes some of them just give away their paintings because, you know, they want to, their art to adorn the walls so that many people will see. Out of 30 million, at least, you know, 10% also would have seen our art of work in various centers of our institute. So that is what an artist wants. An artist wants more and more in number of people can see their work of art. So that's what that gives them satisfaction. So these workshops, when we conduct it, so what we do is we host them for 10, 15 days, and we give them the material, and they do their paintings and leave it behind and they go away. That is where, you know, we have been acquiring the art over the years. We have got a number of arts, and we came out with a coffee table book in 2012. That also Mr. Surya Prakash only credited that. It's 2020 Aesthetics at LV Prasada Institute. So number of paintings and landscapes and everything was there. So this is what I would say, that I think he made a huge difference to the institute and the appearance. So we really miss him a lot, is what I would like to say. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much. Surya Prakash ji not only contributed paintings and his time to LV Prasad Eye Hospital and to create a museum out there, he has also contributed a lot towards development of visual art in South India, and especially in Telangana. He has promoted and supported several artists. He had extremely respectful relations, even with his juniors, Vaikuntham ji or Lakshma God or Devraj Dakul. They are all younger to him, but he had equal respect and encouragements from them. He invited several artists from all over the country to come to Hyderabad and create artworks there. So nice of you.
Thank you.
Vijayaji, we are very thankful. I think
if
Dr.
I may
Rao is also there.
If I may intervene, sorry, sir.
Yeah, please.
So I would like to thank Vijaya ma'am for speaking. Even the other day I watched your webinar, ma'am. All your words and I mean all your memories actually showcase how much you're missing and how friendly you have been with my dad. Thank you so much. And yeah, we all forgot about the murals he's been doing. Yeah, Vijaya ma'am did mention about some murals in LV Prasad Institute. The rock garden is a must see whenever anyone goes. It's really like a garden actually. When you see from upstairs, you feel you can just sit and gaze at it. It's beautiful. So, and one more thing he has done towards the end was the underpass near IKEA underpass, you know, in Hyderabad. So both the underpasses have his work displayed on either sides of the underpass. It's again, this order was, I think KTR wanted his work there. So the work order was given to Kalakriti Art Gallery to complete the assignment. So they have used tiles to do that, you know, a very small tiles.
Mosaic tiles.
Yeah. And so he spent a lot of time standing there and gazing at it, because every piece has to be stuck in an orderly manner with this numbering and all that. So initially he did not like what they did. So the Delhi contractor did a very bad work. So he just told Kalakriti, look, I don't want my name here nor anything. Please take it off. And then later on, again, Kalakriti started one manufacturing unit of these tiles and then created it all. Yeah, it's come to an end, but it's not yet over. But there is a beautiful video of his in Kalakriti, with Kalakriti, which they shot, because he has clearly mentioned that I do not want a single rupee out of this work. It's a gift to Hyderabadis. I'm leaving this for Hyderabadis as a gift from me. It's a very touching video. I mean, whenever I see that, I just cry. I just can't. It's like he's just walking away saying that, you know, oh, okay, I'm sorry, sir. I think I intervened in between. Sorry.
So nice, sir.
Can I just
That is
butt
how
in?
we remember.
Can I just butt in, sir? Can I just come in?
Yeah, please come.
No, I just want to say thank you very much because I want to leave. And it was a good opportunity talking on Mr. Surya Prakash's artwork, something which I had done a few years back. And it was like, for me, reliving the entire experience. Thank you very much, Ravindra ji. Thank you very much, Samanvay.
Thank you
very much, Arun
Ashrafi
and Mrs.
for
Vijaya.
giving so much time and speaking so elaborately about Surya Prakash ji. Thank you so much.
Actually, ma'am, I should tell you, you have so much knowledge about his work, which we don't have. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, as a daughter, I cannot explain the way you explained. You narrated each phase of his work. Really.
Yeah, naturally, Arun, it's not possible for you to really know unless, you know, your father has spoken to you or you have, you know, quizzed your father, you know, on his work, how he works, why he works, when he works. So, you know, I mean, it makes a difference. Yeah.
Great.
You.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So good night, all of you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night. I was just wondering if Dr. Rao is there online. Pavanji?
No, I don't. He's not available right now.
Dr. Balasubramaniam is there, Pavan. Just check. Dr. Balasubramaniam or Dr. Shivaji from CCMB. Subsequently, they joined us, the institute also as research directors. They would know more about
No, we don't have.
Shivaji said that he would join, Dr. Shivaji.
Actually,
he was there were neighbors in the institute also, in their offices. So they would come for tea every day together at 4 o'clock in the evening. That I used to miss, you know, at 4 o'clock, they would come down to cafeteria to have a cup of tea. And after he passed away, Dr. Shivaji, he was a research director. So, and actually they worked together in CCMB also. So they are very good friends. And actually, if they're there, probably.
They're not. I don't see them, ma'am.
Dr. Shivaji said he would join, actually. Balu, he said he would try, Dr. Balasubramaniam. But if they're there, probably they can raise their hands.
No, they are not. They're not there right now.
Okay, fine. It's fine.
Okay, Pavanji.
Yeah.
I'm actually extremely thankful to Dr. Ashrafi Bhagat ji and the Samanvay space for inviting us here today for this beautiful, inspirational and educative session on Sri Surya Prakash ji. A special thanks for Arun Khan ji for being here and giving us the pleasure of your views on your father. I also thank the audience for being here with us with so much interest and patience. We are sure we'll have so many sessions like this, and we all will enjoy together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.